Good to have you with us. I'm Raymond Goh, and this is Nightline. The top stories. It's time to broaden efforts in rebuilding Islamic civilization, says the Yang di-Pertuan Agong. And Donald Trump impeached on 2 counts by the House of Representatives. Good morning. Yang di-Pertuan Agong Al-Sultan Abdullah Riayatuddin Al-Mustafa Billah Shah on Thursday called upon Muslim countries to broaden their efforts to benefit the wider spectrum of the Ummah. The ruler said it was imperative for Muslim nations to band together to improve their collective well-being, and this should be done even as the Ummah were facing severe challenges in many parts of the world.
Perhaps the time has come for us to broaden our individual efforts to transcend towards the wider Ummah. Let us all join together and pledge our commitment to practice what we perform 5 times a day in our global personas to improve the life of our Ummah and rebuild the Islamic civilization to where it was before.
The king, who is the country's head of the Islamic religion, said that the concept of hiwar, which means dialogue in Arabic, was crucial in efforts to achieve development in accordance with the principles of Islam. He said the concept should also be adopted when clarifying misconceptions about the religion. Al-Sultan Abdullah added the Quran maintains that the primary goal of dialogue is to promote the common good, al-khaira, for the whole of humankind. He stressed through the use of dialogue, Muslims will have a powerful platform to correct the misconceptions of their faith among people of other religions and ideologies, allowing Muslims to improve interactions and relationships with other cultures and civilizations. Al-Sultan Abdullah also paid tribute to the younger generation of dynamic Muslim youths who continue to contribute to the world. He decreed, with a combination of positive values, access to information and communication technology, the ability to embrace differences and other faiths, the new generation of Muslims has great potential to revive Islamic civilization and usher in a new golden age of Islam. In thanking state leaders and delegates, the king said their presence at the summit reflected their personal belief and conviction towards the strengthening of the Ummah.
I would like to especially acknowledge the contribution of my dear Prime Minister, Yang Amat Berhormat Tun Dr. Mahathir bin Mohamad, for his stewardship in organizing this summit. The presence of notable leaders of the Islamic world here today is a testimony to your stature as a global and Muslim statesman.
The king said this in his royal address when opening the Kuala Lumpur Summit 2019 in the presence of Muslim leaders such as the Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, and Iranian President Hassan Rouhani. Also gracing the event was Raja Permaisuri Agong Tunku Haja Aziza Amina Maimuna Iskandaria. For Prime Minister Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad, the Kuala Lumpur Summit 2019 is not meant to discriminate or isolate anyone, but to solve problems plaguing the Muslim world. Tun Dr. Mahathir, who is also the chairman of the summit, said it was a small start, and if these ideas, proposals and solutions are acceptable and proved workable, then Malaysia hopes to take it up to the larger platform for consideration. Tun Dr. Mahathir, in his keynote address, said among the problems faced by Muslim countries are governance and development, which will be discussed at the highest level. For a start, the discussion will involve only a few countries, as it was not possible to handle the whole of the Muslim countries worldwide.
Despite that, we have also invited almost all Muslim nations to participate in this summit, albeit at different levels. We await to hear the views and wisdom of the distinguished participants. We pray that through this summit, we will go a little way forward towards solving our problems.
More than 500 delegations, including leaders, academicians, politicians and NGOs from 56 countries are attending the summit, with the theme, the role of development in achieving national sovereignty at the Kuala Lumpur Convention Centre.
Peace and prosperity.
Meanwhile, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said the United Nations Security Council, UNSC, is out of date and has failed to protect the interests of Muslim nations with a population of over 1.7 billion people. He stressed that the current system favors only the permanent members, consisting of 5 countries with veto powers, namely China, France, Russia, the United Kingdom, and the US. Erdogan, in his address at the KL Summit 2019, also said a solution to global problems should be found with an understanding that focuses on people and conscience, instead of an interest-oriented perspective. He also acknowledged that some of the problems facing the Muslim world are due to its own weaknesses and have nothing to do with external factors. According to him, the biggest problem facing Muslims on a global scale is the lack of implementation on joint policies, as Muslim nations remain fragmented and is plagued by sectarianism. Erdogan also expressed his hope that the KL summit will strengthen solidarity between Muslim countries.
Buletine katkı sağlamasını diliyorum. Değerli kardeşlerim, inşallah bugün burada sürdürülebilir kalkınma, güvenlik ve savunma, ticaret ve yatırım, teknoloji ve internet başlıklarında işbirliği imkanlarımızı değerlendireceğiz. Ayrıca İslam düşmanlığından teröre, tefrikadan bölgemizi kasıp kavuran iç kavgalara, mezhep ve etnik temelli çatışmalara kadar birçok meselemizi özgürce konuşma fırsatı bulacağız. 1,7 milyarlık nüfusuyla dünya nüfusunun ekonomik açıdan bağımsız bizim...
Iranian President Hassan Rouhani, in the meantime, called on Muslim countries to cooperate in fighting against U.S. economic terrorism and tackling the Islamic world's woes. He said American economic regime and the dollarization of national and global economies have provided the United States with the possibility of advancing its hegemony under the threat of sanctions and economic terrorism.
جهان اسلام باید تدابیری برای رهایی خود از سلطه دلار و سیستم مالی آمریکا پیش بینی کند. واقعیت آن است که کشورهای اسلامی از نظر اقتصادی می توانند مکمل یکدیگر باشند و ایجاد سازوکارهای خاص برای همکاری‌های بانکی و مالی میان خود به کار گیرند. استفاده از واحد پولهای ملی در تجارت متقابل، عقد موافقتنامه‌های تجارت ترجیحی در جهان اسلام، سرمایه گذاری در زمینه‌ای که دارای مزیت نسبی می باشد باید مورد نظر کارشناسان جهان اقتصاد، جهان اسلامی اقتصاد قرار گیرد.
Thank you very much, the Honorable Tun Dr. Mahathir.
The Kuala Lumpur Summit 2019 also attracted attention with the special appearance of a social humanoid robot named Sophia. Clad in a dark blue black gown, Sophia welcomed delegates to the opening of the summit and also delivered a brief speech.
It is an honor to witness such a spirit of international cooperation. I am impressed by the efforts made by the world leaders together in Malaysia for this important discussion about the development of Islamic countries and Muslims everywhere. With that, I wish you all a productive KL Summit 2019.
The robot was brought to the summit on the request of Prime Minister Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad and will be put on display at the Serba Dynamic Exhibition area during the duration of the conference. And in conjunction with the KL Summit 2019, Yang di-Pertuan Agong Al-Sultan Abdullah Riayatuddin Al-Mustafa Billah Shah toured the exhibition hall featuring high-tech and interactive augmented reality presentations of the Muslim world. His Majesty was accompanied by President Recep Tayyip Erdogan of Turkey, President Hassan Rouhani of Iran, and Prime Minister Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad. They were given a 20-minute tour of the exhibition involving various government-linked agencies and private sectors. The four-day summit themed the role of development in achieving national sovereignty aims to, among others, discuss and find new solutions to problems facing the Muslim world, as well as to improve the well-being of Muslims and Muslim countries in general. Meanwhile, during the round-table session and discussion, Tun Dr. Mahathir urged all Muslim countries to start working on creating and developing their own technologies in order to stay ahead in technological advancement along with developed nations. He noted that right now the Muslim world is still far behind and is dependent on creation and technologies of the non-Muslims, and that it needs to work doubly hard to catch up.
Obviously, for the Muslim community, all these only serve to remind us of how far behind we are and how we have worked doubly hard to catch up with the rest of the world. On one hand, we are dependent on creations and technologies of the non-Muslims, and when we manage to catch up, they are already ahead with new technological advancement, and we now need to acquire and familiarize. If we do not start creating and developing our own technologies, we will forever be playing catch-up with the rest of the developed nations.
At the session themed the priority of development and the challenges, Tun Dr. Mahathir also expressed hope that the KL summit would be able to come up with tangible strategies and approaches in addressing the matter. He also said Muslim countries have no choice but to develop and progress as fast as possible if they are to remedy all the misfortunes that had befallen the Ummah. The Prime Minister also shared with the delegates Malaysia's development plans, which provide clear strategies to set the way forward for its national development agenda. He added that the government had also recently launched the Shared Prosperity Vision 2030, a national development blueprint that outlines a 10-year goal aimed to create wealth for the country that would benefit all Malaysians.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your...
On to the SRC international trial now. Former Prime Minister Datuk Sri Muhammad Najib Tun Razak told the High Court that he had a sense there was enough money in his bank accounts that he kept issuing checks even without knowing the exact balance in these accounts. The 66-year-old Pekan MP said this during cross-examination by ad hoc prosecutor Datuk V. Sitambaram on Thursday. Datuk Sri Najib said he would only ask his former principal private secretary, the late Datuk Azlin Alias, to check with SRC International CEO Nik Faisal Arif Kamil on the balance in his accounts. He also agreed with Sitambaram's suggestion that he wrote checks amounting to millions of ringgit for political use, among others. Further questioned by Sitambaram, the Pekan MP reiterated that he believed the monies in his bank accounts came from a donation by an Arab royal family and claimed that he never questioned the funds being paid into his account until it became an issue. Sitambaram then proposed for an early adjournment for the day after informing Muhammad Naslan Muhammad Ghazali that he was feeling unwell. The judge allowed the prosecution's application and set for the trial to resume on January 6 next year. Welcome back. The Sarawak Marine Police have foiled an attempt by two men to smuggle 30,000 ringgit worth of liquor into the state. According to Sarawak Region 5 Marine Police Commander ACP Shamsul Kasim, the seizure was made during an operation conducted at Jalan Setia Raja, Tabuan in Kuching on Wednesday.
Jadi minuman liquor tersebut disyaki adalah tanpa cukai kastam yang menjadi kesalahan di bawah Akta Kastam 1967. Dua orang yang disyaki telah ditahan Dan barang-barang tersebut telah dibawa ke pangkalan kita di markas kita pasukan Polisi Marin ini untuk tindakan seterusnya lah.
Shamsul added that a lorry that was used to transport the contraband was also seized in the operation. It is understood that the 200 boxes containing 4,800 bottles of liquor were found behind the truck, hidden under a green canvas sheet. From January to November this year, a total of 37 arrests and seizures had been made under the Customs Act 1967, with an estimated value of 7.4 million ringgit, 8 times higher than the previous year. A former Malaysian Communications and Multimedia Commission (MCMC) senior officer was charged at the Kuala Lumpur Sessions Court on Wednesday with accepting 87,000 ringgit graft involving the approval of a Universal Service Provision (USP) program. The MCMC Post and E-Commerce Division Deputy Director, Muhammad Iskandar King, however, pleaded not guilty when the charge was read to him before Sessions Court Judge Azura Alwi. It is understood that the 42-year-old was charged with 3 counts of receiving bribes from 2 companies in 3 separate occasions since 2015. In the first charge, Iskandar allegedly received 50,000 ringgit from Golden Ventures Sindram Berhad Director Muhammad Azuzi Muhammad Kamil as an inducement to secure a USP contract. While on the second and third charge, he is alleged to have received 2 checks totaling 18,500 ringgit in 2015, also from Muhammad Azuzi, who was a consultant for OCK Satir Engineering. The court set bail at 20,000 ringgit in one surety and has also ordered the accused to surrender his passport. The next court date is set for January 16th. In Johor, the case of the dispatch rider S. Tiran, who was charged with supporting and possessing items linked to the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam (LTTE) last month, has been transferred to the Kuala Lumpur High Court. Sessions Judge Rasida Rosli made the decision after hearing submissions from Deputy Public Prosecutor Muhammad Firdaus Abu Hanifah to have the case transferred in accordance with Section 177A of the Criminal Procedure Code. However, no date was set for mention. Also in Johor, 2, including a child, were killed in a 2-vehicle collision in Taman Dahlia, Pasir Gudang on Thursday. According to Pasir Gudang Fire and Rescue Operations Chief Zainuddin Sadani, 2 others, a man in his 40s and a 1-year-old infant, were also injured in the 9 a.m. incident involving a Proton Iswara and Honda cars. Zainuddin said the dead were the Proton Iswara driver and his 3-year-old child, and their identities have yet to be ascertained. Their bodies were sent to the Sultan Ismail Hospital for post-mortem. Court convicts masterminds of 2009 Philippines massacre. More on this when we come back. On the foreign front now, Donald Trump has become the 3rd U.S. president in history to be impeached by the House of Representatives, setting up a trial in the Senate that will decide whether he remains in office. The Democratic majority House voted on 2 charges: that the president abused his power and that he had obstructed Congress.
Number 18th.
The House vote came 4 months after a whistleblower blew open the scandal of Trump pressuring Ukraine's president to investigate his potential White House challenger in 2020, the veteran Democrat Joe Biden. After a marathon 10-hour debate, the first article was passed by 230 votes to 197. Lawmakers also voted 229 to 198 to approve the second article of impeachment facing Trump for obstructing the congressional probe into his dealings with Kiev. Meanwhile, Trump railed against the impeachment vote during a rally in Michigan, saying the radical left are consumed by hatred.
But they've been trying to impeach me from day one. They've been trying to impeach me from before I ran, okay? Because if you remember, when I ran, I went immediately to number 1, never came off number 1. But they have 2 things. They're vicious. They're the most vicious people. The Republicans aren't as vicious. They may learn to be vicious after going through this stuff, But the other thing, the Democrats always stick together. Now think of it. 3 Democrats went over to our side, no Republicans. It's unheard of.
Despite testimony from 17 officials that Trump leveraged his office for political gain, the president maintained his innocence throughout the impeachment inquiry, denouncing it as an attempted coup and an assault on America. Trump will now stand trial in the Senate, where his Republicans hold a solid majority and are expected to exonerate him. 2 days of heavy rains have inundated 5 districts in Narathiwat province in southern Thailand and wreaked havoc on some 37,000 residents. The 5 districts flooded were Sukirin, Waing Sungai Kolok, Chanai and Si Sakon. According to the Narathiwat Disaster Prevention and Mitigation Division, in a statement on Thursday, so far 8,335 families were affected by the floods, with 55 families having been evacuated to relief centers. Several roads in Sukirin and Chanai districts were also rendered impassable to light vehicles. Meanwhile, Thailand's meteorological department forecast heavy rains in Nakhon Si Thammarat, Patalung Songkhla, Patani, Yala and Narathiwat in southern Thailand. A Philippine court on Thursday found key members of a powerful political clan guilty of a 2009 massacre in a southern province that left 57 people, including 32 media workers, dead in a brazen act that horrified the world. The regional trial court, led by Judge Jocelyn Solis Reyes, sentenced them to life imprisonment, which is 40 years in the Philippines, the maximum punishment allowed by law. They were also ordered to compensate the families of the victims. Several Ampatuan family members and police officers were acquitted for a lack of evidence. Among the main suspects convicted was Andal Ampatuan Jr., who was accused of leading the mass murder. The case involves more than 100 detained suspects, led by members of the Ampatuan family and many police officers and government militiamen.